Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are thrilled to celebrate Latin Heritage Month with our good friends and partners over at NALIP, the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. We are delighted to partner with NALIP on this most important discussion on how race impacts Afro-Latinx creatives and performers in Hollywood. The vestiges of colonialism continue to keep the Afro-Latinx community largely marginalized and ignored within Latin American society, particularly with the media. Our goal with this panel is to identify solutions on how these attitudes and perceptions can change.
It is my pleasure to be co-presenting this panel on behalf of the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. We believe that a strong partnership and solidarity with a sister organization such as AAFCA can bring us closer together to the goal of not only unity, but to be able to move the needle forward in the space of representation, equity, and inclusion. We hope that you appreciate this panel because this is one of many to come, and also a stronger partnership with AAFCA in the next few years to come. So thank you, and I look forward to getting to know all of you, and please enjoy.
Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Magdalena, and I'm going to be the moderator for tonight. And having a social work background and hat, I just want to make sure that everybody is respectful and that we let the quiet one speak because there's a lot to talk about, a lot of emotions. So I just want to put that out there first. And I would just want to take this time and thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on this panel. I want to thank the organizers, AAFCA and NALIP, two great organizations that promote, educate, advocate for Black and Brown people. Welcome everybody to the wonderful panel of Afro-Latinx in the TV and film. First, I just wanted to go over a little bit brief history of being Afro-Latino or Afro-Latinx for some people who do not know. We are part of the African diaspora. The ships stopped in the Caribbean first, Hispaniola first, and then went to North America. In some history, Cuba was one of the major slave trades. So many people perceive Cubans as lighter skinned, but there's a lot of African presence and culture in Cuba. And with that, the colonial mentality, which has affected the whole world, especially Latin America, in terms of white is better, white is right, a mentality which is infused in our culture, which some terms that are used, one is adelantar la raza, uplifting the race, making sure people marry white to clean up the race. So racism definitely does exist in Latino culture. One of the reasons that I do a documentary called Negrita about Afro-Latinos in the United States is to start a discussion because growing up with my parents, it was definitely like you're Dominican and you're not Black. And one of the things that we can also discuss is the term Black being used as African American and interchangeably with Blackness and part of the African diaspora. So the first step in this conversation, we want to talk about our experiences and our experiences in TV and film, and also what are the solutions or how are we contributing to the solutions. So one of the discussions that me and Gil had talked about was colorism and how discussions I feel in Latin America, we don't really discuss, light skin versus dark skin, but we have our own nuances around that. And since we have the only male on the panel, Rick, I wanted to start with you first. So one of my questions is, first, when did you know that you were Black? or that you're Afro-Latino? Like, what was that experience? And what is your experience with colorism?
When did I know? I think I knew, like, it's hard to say because, like, I remember, I'll put it like this. I was dating my wife at the time, and she was graduating from college, and I was meeting her family. She's Black, and I had a Puerto Rico shirt on, and actually it was for her sister-in-law, so we were in Atlanta. So I had a Puerto Rico shirt on, and I run into her sister-in-law who I finally meet, my sister-in-law who I finally meet for the first time. And she looked at me, she's like, you know, you're Black, right? And I was like, yeah, I do. But I think that was the first time that I ever like really like owned it in that moment. Like I always knew, I never really said it out loud. I just kind of like, and I think before that, you know, growing up, I was privy to this whole like, you know, Dominicans and Puerto Ricans not getting along because, you know, one spoke more Spanish than the other. The Puerto Ricans were trying to speak English more. They were trying to acclimate towards, you know, being more American or whatever that meant, you know. And so white supremacy sort of had his hooks on, you know, the culture from the moment I was born and, you know, the moment of me going to school and seeing that play out. And so that story just kind of highlighted for me, like verbally affirming that out loud, you know, but as a matter of factly knowing I always had it inside me and I knew it, but it was that moment where it just clicked and I was like, yeah, I'm a part of the diaspora, you know? And so, so it was like, so that was like, must have been like early 20s when that happened. And so my experience, you know, coming from New York City and then moving to California to continue my, you know, aspirations to be an actor was sort of a rude awakening because New York City for me was, you know, I didn't really get a chance to experience like passive aggressive energy from white people, microaggressions, and also them sort of making fun of me being the Puerto Rican who has a Brooklyn accent, you know, and so them basically judging me because they didn't see what a real actor looks like, right? Because I had a Brooklyn accent, that meant I didn't study Stanislavski and I didn't understand Meisner, and I wasn't, you know, that I just looked like a guy who was trying to, you know, deal drugs or used to sell drugs and now got an audition and now he's acting, you know. So it was that energy that I was meeting for the first time, and I would get into these, you know, these passive aggressive confrontations with people. And if it wasn't for my wife, who, you know, grew up in California as a Black woman and understood the microaggressions and passive aggressive energy of white people, she handles it brilliantly. And so I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? She said this, and I'm so angry. I just want to punch him in the face. And she's like, you can't do that. You got to say this to him. And that way that'll get him off of you, you know? So I was just struggling to kind of understand, like, you know, what I meant to Hollywood. And so fast forward, like, you know, I'm getting really great parts in films and I'm working a lot, but I didn't understand what Hollywood saw in me because I thought they were just going to judge me for the work, but they were also judging me for the way that I spoke and how I looked, because I didn't look, you know, European, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? I look like a Puerto Rican and Dominican guy from New York. And so the African, you know, roots in me are there. And so I think that, you know, sort of ruined the introduction to me in certain ways, because I didn't, and me trying to be myself, I had no concept of code switching and, you know, trying to like put on airs about the information that I know as an actor. I was just being me. And I saw how that damaged like this like press of Rick Gonzalez, because they just saw somebody who didn't seem trained, you know. And I think for me, that was always like the frustration for me in this business is like, why do I have to prove to people that I know everything they know? Like, why do I have to change the way I talk and the way I dress to prove to them that I've always been a serious actor and I have the same talent that everyone else does, you know?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That's always been the frustration.
It's definitely the mentality of what, you know, quote unquote Latino is. And their conceptions of what that is, and hopefully we're moving towards a little bit of like judging on acting. But I wanted to go to Gina to see her experience on like when did you know that you were Black, and and the colorism that you've experienced in TV and film, because as we know, Latinos go from white, blonde hair, blue eyed to the darkest dark, and so we want to include more of the Afro Latinos in this talk who are perceived in one way in various situations, but definitely we're talking about your experiences as a working actress, producer.
Right. Listening to Rick brings up a lot. When did I first know I was Black? I grew up in a Cuban household with parents that immigrated before the revolution. My dad was brown. My mom not. And so it never occurred to me that I was white, like some Latinos feel they are. But the culture was such a huge part of growing up. The language, the music, who we are and where we come from in the island was duplicated in the 3-bedroom apartment in the Bronx that I grew up in. And it seemed like Blackness was not us. Blackness was the African American experience, and which, as I grew older and had friends and was friends with everybody on the block and in school and all that, there was not a cross section of familiarity, in the 70s and the 80s that I could sort of hook into. You were either decidedly Latina or you were decidedly Black. But there was room for all of that because there were plenty of Latinos that looked like me in New York City. There were, plenty of Latinos, there was my family, so it didn't feel weird. Moving into the entertainment industry, it was a rude awakening, and it was a whole other ball game because you had to choose, and it wasn't, or rather I should say they chose for you because I present Black, period, end of sentence. So now I had to learn how to be this, what they expected my exterior to match up with whatever their experience was of Blackness. And it was jarring, and it was odd, and it was absolutely during that time when the urban film was in, and I didn't fit that mold. it was infuriating because I was not Black enough, and I didn't look Latina enough, and so where do I fit, and where do I go, and what does it mean? And getting a lot of backlash from the African American community, feeling like I was stealing their roles because of the colorism that exists in the African American community as well. Because I'm light-skinned, and all of the trauma that brings up, and then just not being able to audition for Latina roles, or if you audition for Latina roles, it was really just an exercise because you knew going in that you didn't have a shot.
Well, awesome. Thank you for that. So,
You're welcome.
I'm sure in this room there are similar experiences. And just to note, the majority of us are from New York, so we have some of that similar backgrounds. Right. Because growing up in LA or Miami or Middle America, your experiences and relationships are going to be different to your Blackness and what that means. So I want to go to Aida to let us know when did she realize she was Black and her struggles in colorism in TV and film and comedy.
So it's funny because I was just recently informed that I'm not Black. And
Sorry.
And I was like, wow, my life is not a reflection of the privilege. But so I grew up between Miami and New York. And so my stepfather is Cuban and my mother's Puerto Rican and my biological father is Dominican. So within there is so much, there's so many complexities when you explore these three different cultures, right? Because my stepfather, who's a white Cuban with green eyes, pointed out the Black in me at a very young age. People who are darker than me would be like, really? And I'm like, yeah, because they would say, es ordinaria, tiene las facciones de negro. She looks like, if she marries somebody Black, the children are definitely going to be Black, because she has a lot of Black in her. And so, you know, at a very young age, I was told these things where I was going to school where people were calling me white, because in Miami, there's not in the hood, there's not a big white population. They haven't, gentrified that part yet. I'm sure they're on their way. But so it's so complicated because, some people will call me a red bone and then some people will call me a cracker. And it's so confusing for me as a young person that I had to define my own identity instead of letting others, because even now people will say to me, you're not Black because, and only Latinos, right, will say you're not Black because of the texture of your hair, or you don't look Black. But it's only within our Latinx community, because Viola Davis will never tell Halle Berry that she's not Black. And Halle Berry, Paula Patton, Quincy Jones's daughters, we are all in the same, the color wheel, the same. So this is very complicated. But I actually was told that I was Black at a very young age, because I was told that I didn't look white passing. Therefore, that made me Black. And my grandmother was a Black woman from Puerto Rico, and my uncles, we all, we're Puerto Rican. We all have a whatever you want to call us. We go the spectrum. So I mean, it was very young for me. But I'll tell you this: my birth certificate, my daughter just looked at it, doesn't even have on the race. There's nothing, because they didn't know what to categorize me as in Boston, because I'm not white and I'm not Black to them. So they just left me.
Interesting. Mine says Caucasian, but
yeah, it's really interesting to categorize them.
So how has it been in work and comedy as like identifying yourself, or like going to Black audiences or Latino audiences? Has the perception been warming?
Yeah, I tell you, Black American people embrace me more than my own people sometimes, especially living in the space of comedy, because comedy is a place where we don't exist. I have a special with HBO Max, and we just had this conversation earlier today. They're the first people to give a Puerto Rican, Dominican, and a 1 hour special, a woman, because you don't see it. And comedy is a very interesting place, because we do the social commentary for the people, right? And when you look at television and you look at film, and I love my Mexican brothers and sisters, I love my Cuban brothers and sisters, I love my Venezolano brothers and sisters. But Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, we've been here for a long time. They're from Peru, Panama, Argentina that are Black. And I think it's time for people to know that we're global. And so comedy for me has become, in addition to being funny, I feel like there's a responsibility to tell those stories, because we don't have anyone else. I mean, there's nobody telling them. It's just we can buy people's stuff, we can show up and support people's stuff. But when it comes to representation, there's a serious void when it comes to people who are not, from Central America, and then they tokenize us and they make us all stereotypes, and and that's a problem.
Well, one of the reasons that, we are put in boxes is to know how to be treated. I'm sure everybody has experienced the, who are you? What are you? Where are you from? And, the what are you or where are you from is a very loaded question.
Yeah.
Because, they want to know, in essence, to me, they want to know if you're Black or not. What category do I put you in? How do I treat you? So it's very important. It's American culture.
I know everybody on this panel can say that in California, when you speak Spanish, people ask you how you learned it.
Oh yeah.
Where did you learn Spanish? And I'm
That's true.
Absolutely. So you say you're Cuban. Which parent?
Yeah.
Yeah, can't be both.
No. And then it's just like, well, how are you Black? How do you speak Spanish and be Black?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is your experience. I've also heard, especially in California, like, being Mexican because that's the only Latino that they see. So in being Mexican, I'm gonna introduce Sarah. So forgive me for before I didn't read everybody's bio or introduction. We just jumped right into it. But Sarah has definitely an interesting background history. She was adopted by Mexican parents and lived in Mexico for a while, and now does Mexicano music. Thinks she has a beautiful voice, and she is up and coming superstar. So in that cultural mixture, of course you were adopted as a baby, but how did you know that you were Black? And how has that affected in your music, in your career?
Well, I mean, yeah, I was adopted by a Mexican family, and so all my siblings are Mexican, aunts, uncles, cousin, everyone's Mexican. So for me, I didn't really embrace my Blackness until I got to school, and it was just like, whoa, like people don't see me as Mexican, people see me as Black, and that was like a big issue for me. It was just me just within myself, like, well, what am I? Am I Mexican? Am I Black? And then there's people telling me like, you're not Mexican, like, or you're not Black, or like there's this popular TV show Rebelde that it was a really popular TV show in Mexico, and I remember I was in like 5th grade and I wore the little outfit to school. Oh my gosh, like so many of the kids like, why are you wearing that? Like you're not Mexican, like why are you wearing that? So, and I do get it a lot. I mean, me and my parents, we go out and I speak Spanish to them, and it's always, nobody ever stops and thinks maybe like, oh, like Afro Latinas exist. Like I know that my situation is different because I was adopted, but either way, I just really get to see how uneducated people are, because it's always like, oh, did you learn Spanish in school? Or, I'll go out with my mom and we're speaking Spanish and people will ask her, oh, like, who is that? And she'll be like, that's my daughter. And they'll be like, but how? Like,
yeah,
my mom's like, that's my daughter. And they'll be like, your daughter-in-law? And my mom's like, no, like, that is my daughter. And we shouldn't have to give any more explanations. And so for me, I never felt like I had to choose. So I venture into hip hop and I venture into regional Mexican and I venture into reggaeton because I don't box myself in, with one label. To me, I'm Mexicana, I'm Black, like, and so it's been really hard with my music career because I sing regional Mexican music, and so I have a lot of Latinos just shutting it down, telling me I'm not Mexican, I shouldn't be singing that genre. And then I also, recently one of my videos went viral and I really got to see like just what people really think, and it's just crazy. The colorism in the Latino community is crazy, like, but it just shows how uneducated people are. But I feel like nowadays to be educated is so easy, like, and it costs nothing. And so I know that I've been receiving a lot of hate and a lot of just racism, but I'm honestly thankful because it just gives me the opportunity to educate people. And so a lot of Latinos have been commenting on my stuff, like racist things. But I just love that so many other Latinos are coming and they're plugging in articles and they're plugging in, documentaries, just trying to educate these people. And to me, it was such a blessing to see. I actually saw a comment where someone made, like, a Latino made some really racist comments, and somebody else plugged in an article. And I kid you not, like an hour later, they commented again to that person and they said, wow, like, thank you. Like, I literally had no idea. And so I just see it as, man, like, just a blessing in disguise, you know?
Yeah, some people are blissed in their ignorance and they want to stay there because it benefits them on various levels. And sometimes educating others can be taxing. So, just be mindful of that. And like, you don't have to educate the world about, yourself or your Blackness.
Yeah.
So, Silliness, you're next. Wanted to know, when did you know that you were Black and how colorism has affected your work?
I always knew that I was la negrita, you know what I mean? La mulata. Growing up, I was like I always thought it was just, some endearment term. But obviously not everyone in the extended family would use it in an endearing way. I always knew that I was different because of, the texture of my hair, my full lips, the width of my nose, my bubble butt, like, like all those things that were maybe different from my other cousins. My father's Cuban, a light-skinned Cuban, and my mother is a beautiful caramel Dominicana. So I grew up, in a household where we are like the spectrum of, it's a color chart. And I think that I realized that growing up, I always knew that I was considered different. And different in that sense that I didn't belong. Like, I was always made to feel less than because I wasn't blanquita. I was made to feel ugly. I grew up never ever being told, "Qué linda te ves." I was never told you're beautiful. If anything, I remember sitting around like while all my cousins with their straight hair and their quote perfect noses and European features being praised for their beauty. And I would be made to feel like there was something wrong with me. And I never felt that until I was around, the extended family. And that damages you. You go through years of, words matter. And you go through years thinking like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not worthy. I guess I'm not this. But as far as my Blackness, once I started auditioning in Hollywood, is when I realized that I was not seen as a Latina. I was seen as a Black woman. And I was like, oh, okay, what? It was just confusing to me because I was like, I'm a Latina from the Bronx, and it was never an issue. I know I'm like la negrita, la mulata from the Bronx, but it was like there was like my Latinidad was never in question growing up. Right. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, you're Black. And it was interesting how it was always Caucasian people telling me what I was and wasn't in the industry. And it was interesting because like Gina said earlier, then you start auditioning for roles that are for African American women. And they're looking at you like, what are you doing in this waiting room? And you're like, they just told me to sit here. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I was reading for Lupita, but now they have me reading. Like it's. I mean, those are real experiences that I had, and I never auditioned for a Latina role in my early years. Yeah. It was always the Black roles, and when I went to Hollywood. For a pilot season, I would say maybe 2-3 years before Orange is the New Black, one of the things that I was always encountering was, oh, but you're not Mexican. And I was like, yeah, I never said I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But So it was like either you were Black or you were Mexican in Hollywood, as far as when they thought of me. And when I would go into those rooms and suddenly it was for a role for a Latina, the casting people legit would call my manager, and I'll never forget the last one that sticks out. And they were like, she's great, but what is she? You know what I mean? They were like, she's great, but we really want a Latina. And my manager was like, she's Latina. And they were like, yeah, but she's not Mexican. And she's like, well, the breakdown didn't stay wasn't specific as to Mexican. And the breakdown, guess what, wasn't specific to Mexican, but they just couldn't see me there. They even said we wouldn't know what to do with her as far as building a Spanish family around her.
Because we don't have Spanish families, apparently.
Apparently, you know, I mean, and this is real. And even early on, like I remember auditioning for a pilot and being told, you know, we don't know what she is. It's a little confusing. And they were like, she's Latina. And they were like, yeah, we don't know if Latinas would time travel.
Okay.
So that's a true story. So apparently, so I think that for me, early on, I knew growing up that I was different. I was trigueñita, mulata, but Black was when I started auditioning that I was told, you're Black. And yeah, I am. You know what I mean? But it wasn't a thing, especially growing up in New York. It's a different vibe. It's not, you know, it's just different.
Definitely. New York has its own experiences, and the big cities are definitely, even though like in New York, we have our own little sections like Washington Heights, Lower East Side, but, you know, we still, you know, mingle, take the train together. We're all around each other. So it's definitely a different experience. So last but not least on this question, Yaya.
So I just want to first of all say thank you for even having me on this panel. My experiences, I feel, very different than the others. Up until recently, I never felt embraced by the Latinx community. One, because of how I look. I have darker skin, my hair is kinky. Two, because my people are from Brazil, so we speak Portuguese, not Spanish. And there's a very limited idea. You know, people use the word Hispanic interchangeably or Spanish, like you're from Spain, which I always found really confusing. I actually grew up in Washington Heights, so I grew up speaking Spanish with a weird accent because some words would sound like Portuguese, but then they wouldn't, like, even the darker skinned people at the bodega would respond to me in English, like, don't even try it, like, nice try, but you learned in Spanish in school, you know. I always felt rejected anyway. I've never been cast as anything but Black. I've been cast as like Ethiopian, or I've been cast in other places of the diaspora. The current role is on a show called Chicago Med. The nurse happens to be Brazilian, and I'm not sure if the writers did that because they knew. The first time that every once in a while people come into the ED and I get to occasionally speak, you know, a little bit of English or Portuguese and kind of represent the community that is alive here in Chicago. I'm back in Chicago because we're about to start shooting again. So this is my first time even, you know, feeling embraced by the community. It was always, well, like, I don't even know what Portuguese is. You don't speak Spanish, so. And then there was the, you know, the thing that in my family, we're very culturally Brazilian. So even though it's my mom's side of the family, my father was a capoeirista. He played capoeira, the Brazilian martial arts. So my entire upbringing was going to rodas, going to batizados, going to capoeira events, you know, going to 46th Street on Brazilian Day Parade, and all these different things, you know, cooking certain foods. But it was like a little, like on the hush. It was a little family secret. It was a little thing that if someone caught a whiff of, they'd be like, oh, why Why are you and your siblings, what are you guys speaking? It was never a huge piece of my identity that I felt defined me, because it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the world didn't see me as anything but African American, and I'm proud to be that as well. So it's only recently that I feel like I have a place in the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
because people have been talking about exclusion of Afro-Latinx people and how, you know, there are not enough of us. And it's just like, oh, but what about all those people that you just don't know have heritage in these different places because of your closed-mindedness or
Yes.
lack of exposure to what that means? What is your definition of Latinx? Let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then the other element to it as well for me that I'm very interested in Americans, like the whole hemisphere, being real about what Blackness is, and that yes, the transatlantic slave trade is probably the major reason for our presence here, but we were here before. You know,
Yes.
there's a book called "They Came Before Columbus."
Mm-hmm.
When I was a little kid, there was this dance company called Forces of Nature. We had a big performance at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and we did a skit where the kids were talking about the Olmec, the Black Heads of Stone. And this kid is like screaming at the teacher who doesn't believe, and he's like, "La cabeza negra de piedra es verdad," and he's like going on because people just are like, "What are you talking about?" And so we give all this credit because of who has written the history books. But when we go deeper, there's much more Blackness in our ancestry, even in the pre-colonial ancestry, than we realize, you know. So when I hear this Mexican sister talking in the panel just now about her experience being adopted, you know, I remember seeing a beautiful piece about Mexicans who are the same color as you and who are not adopted, who are just Mexican, you know. So what about them? So I think it's really a matter of, like you said, and like has been said before, educating people, you know.
Awesome. Yes. You know, it is about educating and talking and having these conversations for people to understand, to know, especially when they're traveling or different mentalities, because there's also the other side of, there are a lot of Latinos who don't embrace the Blackness, who definitely, if other people encounter them, well, I'm not Black, even though they're darker skin, and you're like, you know, you are a part of the African diaspora, but it's also part of education, you know, knowing what, you know, Africans did before, and that they weren't, you know, on the islands and in, you know, in the Americas before Columbus. So it's part of that education. Now, one of the things I didn't do as a bad moderator is do the introductions and your bios. I know everybody has Google, but I just wanted to highlight everybody just a little bit before we continue. And after we continue, I definitely want it to be like a relaxed conversation, like it's just primos and, you know, just talking to each other about their experiences. So first, I'm going to go with Miss Gina Torres, is well known for her role as Jessica Pearson on U.S. Network's the hit original series Suits. Torres most recently top-lined and executive produced Pearson, which saw her Suits character take on the world of Chicago Suits. She's also been in various movies. I Think I Love My Wife. And now she says, the youngest of 3 children, Torres was born in Manhattan and raised in the Bronx. And on January 1st, 2020, Torres received a Grand Marshal of the 131st Annual Tournament of Rose Parade alongside Rita Moreno and Lori Hernandez. So that is just a brief brief highlights of Miss Torres. Next is Miss Salinas Lavaya, is an award-winning actress known for her role as Gloria Mendoza in the Netflix hit series Orange is the New Black, and as Gabby Gañero in the Disney original Disney of A Future President. In addition to her film and television credits, Salinas is outspoken activist for the LGBTQ and rights. And she often invited to colleges, campus to speak on diversity and inclusion. She has a book out with her sister, my sister, How One Sibling's Tradition Changed Us Both. So that is definitely a brief synopsis of Salinas, because I remember her in Taina, which has been a while, but she has been in the game for a while doing her thing. The next is Aida Rodriguez, is a writer, performer, comedian, activist, and mother. She made history as the first Latina to appear in 2 comedy specials, airing the same month on both HBO and Showtime. Aida was handpicked by director Taylor Hackford for his film The Comedian, starring Robert De Niro. And that is a brief introduction to Aida, and she is super funny. I have definitely shared some of her clips, and she most recent, her stand-up episode on Tiffany Haddish, They Ready, executive produced by Tiffany Haddish and Wanda Sykes, was well received and viewed on many platforms. Next is Rick Gonzalez. Has created many memorable roles, both on silver screen and on television, including a leading role in the thriller Illegal Tender from producer John Singleton, as well as Dimension Films' supernatural thriller Pulse. He was also in The Rookie and Breaker Boys. And in television realm, Rick started on CW hit Reaper, played the lead in the U.S. Rush, and had reoccurring roles on USA's Mr. Robot. That is also a very brief introduction. Next is Yaya. Yaya da Costa stars as April Sexton, a small, bold, and intuitive ER nurse with the ability to adeptly tackle the most horrid of circumstances in a hospital in NBC's drama Chicago Med. Season 6 of Chicago Med is set to premiere November 2020, and the series has been picked up through season 9 by NBC. Congratulations, Yaya, that's amazing.
Thanks.
Okay. She has been in other films. Take the Lead, opposite Antonio Banderas, for which she received a Teen Choice Award nomination. And that is a brief history, since she has been working on many projects that I didn't even know. Our last but not least is Sara La Morena. Upon first hearing Sara La Morena singing regional Mexican music, what is immediately apparent is that she is a rarity, a stunning vocalist who is also a gorgeous young African-American woman. And we talked a little bit about her history. So, and once again, I'm Magdalena Albizu, owner of Nubian Latina Productions, and also the director of Negrita and Afro-Latina documentary on being Afro-Latina in the United States. So as we continue our discussion, I wanted to go into like some of the things that you're aspiring to do within the industry to promote, you know, your Afro-Latinidad or other people. Like, what are some of the things that you're hoping to do in this space? Anybody can jump in.
I, for one, hope to and am continuing to move in the direction of producing. I think it is key to really maximize whatever power that you find and that you have, and to really maximize those relationships that you've taken along the way. I mean, there's easily like 70 years of experience between us just on this Zoom call alone. We're here for a reason. We're on this call for a reason. It's probably because we're really good at what we do and people trust the product that we put out there, and that is currency. And so to be able to move on that, to be able to go to these relationships and these people, like white people have done all through time, go to these people that already have your respect and say, this is a story I want to tell. This is a point of view that needs to be told. Because representation is everything. And I was listening to you, Yaya, and I was thinking, when I think of Brazil, all I think of is you. All I think of is people that look like, I don't think of Giselle Bundchen. I think of you.
Yeah, but Brazil is a little different that way, like, because it's such a big place, and Bahia has like the most Black people in any country outside of Nigeria. You know what I mean? My grandfather was the color, you know, of, I can't this bottle. So, so yes, it's a little bit different in that way. There's still a lot of colorism. You know?
Yeah.
But they will not admit it because they line it up as a more of a socioeconomic issue. And it's just a coincidence that the richest people happen to be the lightest.
And it's something similar in like the majority of Latino cultures that, you know, slavery was ended maybe a little bit earlier technically, but the mentality is still the same. And it's masked in economics, which I feel like America is shifting in that way. Like, I'm not racist, you're just poor. So that shift is also, I feel like, happening here, where it's, you know, based on economics, which is, you know, not.
But it's also a lie. It's a lie that they've been telling themselves to maintain power. It's a lie that we have chosen to be, you know, passive about because we have no power. I mean, it was one of the first things you ever hear as an actor of color is, oh, well, we went this other way because. I did a show called Cleopatra 2525, which was in the future, which was a big old, you know, instant classic. And by the way, Selene, yes, I was a person of color in the future, so we do exist. I've done it all. I've been in space, so I can tell you that was a lie. But I was doing a recurring character on from the same producers on Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. And they appreciated me, they appreciated my work. They had this idea for this show, and they approached me as the lead. They wanted me to be the, you know, it was 3 girls, and I was like dead smack in the center of it. I was #1 on the call sheet before I even knew what that really meant. And as we moved forward and started shooting, it was untitled at the time. But by the time it went to air, it was called Cleopatra 2525. I was not Cleopatra. Cleopatra was the character who was #3 on the call sheet, who's a white girl. And #2 on the call sheet was another white girl. And they got all the press. And we do press together, but they got all the opportunities to promote the show. And I told the producer, said, what the hell is going on? Like, please explain this to me. Because they had to audition several times for the parts that they got. And they said, here, this is yours, to me. And he said, yeah, there's, you know, there's no way I can't sell a show with a Black woman in the lead.
and that's just part of the ignorance and the microaggressions and the, forced aggressions that we have experienced.
Right. So it's convenient. We're talking about matters of convenience. It's not, it's, we have such a hold on the purse. We are such, Ada speaks to this all the time, the power that the Latinx community has in terms of the economic power that we have. We are buying everything. we are great consumers. We are consumers of fashion. We are consumers of art. We are consumers. You name it. So how is that not powerful? And how do we not harness all of that amongst ourselves?
Yes.
So I'm in the middle of developing a TV show with HBO Max, and I have to look at it from the producing side, from the acting side, and the writing side. And a lot of people will say, well, you have to write the role, you have to create the characters, but they don't understand that we don't have the power because the show still has to be greenlit by a studio, and they have the power. We don't. So when we demand that we see more people that look like us in front of the cameras, and we demand that showrunners put more people of color in the writers' room, we have to demand that we have more showrunners and more executives, because that's where the power is. So when you know what I mean? So my goal is when I hear Yaya speak, right? Or I hear, and I'm a fan of everybody here, because the thing is that if it's not for people who look like this being on television, I would not be able, I don't identify with Gwyneth Paltrow. Like, I don't see her and say, that's me. But there's a very big, we have a big issue within our community where Brazilians do feel like that, and Haitians who are also Afro-Latinos, and Los Garífunos, and the people who all belong to our spectrum, because that is what we are. Or we'll shun somebody because they don't speak Spanish, or because they're dark, and so for me, when I write and when I create, I take all of that with me, because I posted a picture of my uncles the other day on Instagram, and people were like, that black one is your uncle? And I'm like, we all black. We black, dark black, one got Asian eyes black, but we all black. Like, I don't know what you call. So, but the thing is when we create, like, even in my show, like, I demand that the woman that plays my best friend is dark skinned, because my best friend is dark skinned, and I'm not gonna make her Rashida Jones for Hollywood. Either you make the show on my terms, or we don't make it, because I'm tired of looking out and not seeing a reflection of us. Yeah. And when Pearson was on, we were like, or Selenes, because Selenes was playing a prisoner. And we do this kind of thing to each other where we're like, well, she's playing a prisoner, or she's dark skinned. We got to get our stuff together. Yes, we can hold the industry accountable, but at the same time, we got to be honest about who we are. Because if this young woman is saying here she's never felt embraced by her community, then we got some serious issues that we really need to address. And until we start addressing and healing those issues, we cannot be a united front to demand Hollywood to give us what we are worthy of, and we have to believe that we're worthy of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think that when Gina was saying, I'm sorry, like really quick, like when Gina was saying that we do hold a lot of power, right? We're consumers. I mean, we don't eat, if something comes out that we want, like we're like aggressive when it comes to that in many communities. But are we protecting our community? Are we supporting our community? I say that that's where we're lacking. I think that that's the biggest problem. We could sit here, and I have had many conversations throughout the years about this. And at the end of the day, there is such a divide amongst ourselves. So if we're divided amongst ourselves, what do we expect the industry to do? If we're not demanding that we are all represented, the industry is not looking, they're not paying attention to us. We need to demand for everyone. We need to demand for ourselves, for each other, for la indiecita, la negrita, for everyone. And I think that's where we continue to really, really struggle in.
Yeah, I agree. I think I just want to echo what you guys were saying. I think this is a conversation that I've had for the last 20 years as an actor. And I think the issue is that I've always seen is this cancer of assimilation between our communities that once someone finds success, they feel like, they're working so hard to get a seat at the table that they're willing to judge another Latino that they probably don't know nothing about, in terms of their culture, and saying, does that represent us? Do I want that to represent us? And I think that's a cancer, because I think at the end of the day, although I know nothing about the Mexican experience, I still respect it for what it is. And if I'm a studio executive, then it would be my job to say, well, how can I service, a Mexican story? Being a Puerto Rican and Dominican who knows nothing about it, it would be my job to champion it and get the people involved to make sure that a project like that does come to light and it does succeed, instead of finding ways to judge it in such a way that, we never get that story, and then I'm only, serving my own culture, which is the Mexican ideal, and I'm not saying that that's, but in my experience, I've seen that a lot, especially as an actor, because I generally only audition for Mexican parts, and, nothing against it, but it's like, obviously, if I'm going in to read for a part and it comes down to like me and some other guys, and the studio exec is Mexican, then they're obviously going to go with the Mexican actor, which I totally understand. But at the end of the day, no one's in the position of power saying, well, we should find a way to tell these stories. If it wasn't for the Black community, I wouldn't necessarily have the opportunities that I have, or the ability to show my identity in such a way. John Singleton gave me the first lead in a major motion picture. So it's because of him, that he saw something in a Puerto Rican director who wrote it, and Selenis was also in the film. And it's just like, Black people have always championed, what Latinos have been doing and the work that we've done, and I'm appreciative of that, And so at the same time, it's like, you see actors who find success, as Latinos, and you wonder why they don't really, I guess, take full advantage of their potential, because there's no one above them that has the ability to say, hey, I'm going to throw the rope back at you because you're doing great work. And I think we should collaborate. There's this thing happening, and I want to make that, I want to be a part of it, So, I just wanted to echo that, because I feel like assimilation, again, I've seen it time and time again play itself in the relationships that I've had in this industry. And I'm just, at the end of the day, looking at it like, well, that's only going to destroy us instead of help us. It's just a cancer.
Yeah, and part, I think, of the movement that we need to go forward is creating our own stuff, creating our own crews. Like, my background is as a line producer and production manager, like hiring those crews of color, hiring the women, forcing, our numbers, and creating our own space for that. It's and part of that, that's something that also African Americans did, was like creating their own, a little similar space. And, with John Singleton movies, like creating some of those movies or that space independent, like doing, like being in Latino film festivals, creating that space where we can continue to support each other and educate each other on, what it is to be in this industry, in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Absolutely. It was certainly a mandate on Pearson that the crew was reflective of the cast, which was reflective of, actual society, that the world that we lived in. There were women and women of color and men of color just employed during, everywhere on that production. And that was an incredible feeling.
So one question is, who is the person you can confide in when speaking about issues of identity and representation within the industry? Do you feel like there are people that you can talk to within the industry and personally? Yeah.
My mama.
Yeah.
Let's say like on Chicago Med, which is a very popular part of the trilogy of Chicago. Do you feel that I know that they said that they create the characters Brazilian, which they might have, kept you in mind with that. But do you feel that it's a safe space well, not just Chicago Med, but in your career, is there a safe space that you can express yourself?
You know what? Okay. I had an answer when you were talking about Chicago Med, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I've had a couple of conversations with Brian T, who's my co-star, but our characters are like in and out of romantic relationship. He's half Korean and half Japanese, and so we talk about representation of people of color on a larger scale and kind of the different things the very different battles that we fight. As a man, I'm a woman, and certain things that come out of people's mouths on set that are aggressive, ignorant, and we know that they're not, intentionally trying to hurt people, but that's the only person who I can really look at from across the room. Like we're talking about that at lunch, but for the most part, I'm in a space right now where I feel like I'm rejecting even the notion of safe space, because it has to be created by us. We have to demand that any space is a safe space. I'm alive, but Earth being safe for me is my birthright. And if it's not that way, it's my job to make it that way. So it's really difficult because I've been taught by my big sisters and my aunties and great aunties in the business how to behave. And I'm just now like breaking free of that and noticing how even after 5 years of being what they've called, what the producers have called amenable, pleasant, easy, lovely to work with, and what I know is in large part voiceless, scared, brainwashed. And so finding my voice now, and I've even said it in conversation about a hair issue, hair department, always.
Always hair.
It's always starting with hair. It's always in the hair chair.
And so at the end of this conversation, this producer and it was a one-on-one Zoom, and he complimented me for being, one of those synonyms, just so amenable, and said that he was almost like proud of me for using my voice. And I was like, it's not me speaking. I'm speaking for everybody. Like, it is time. Enough is enough. There's too many of us who hairlines starting back here because we didn't speak up for so many decades. Like, that's it. So safe space must be demanded.
I agree.
Totally agree.
I would not have, I don't want to be in business. And though Selena's and I are friends, Gina knows who I am. I haven't seen Rick in a long time. It was the roller skating rink the last time I saw Rick. But people who know that I would rather not do it if I have to do it in a way that creates a place where we feel like we got to tiptoe around. I'm not doing it, and everybody who knows me knows that this is who I am all the time. I don't code switch. So if you want to be in business with me, you have to be willing to be able to go down the rabbit hole to find out who we are. Like when I pitched my show to HBO Max, I said, if we don't have dark-skinned Black people speaking Spanish on the show, I don't want to do it. Because the truth of it is that I'm going to be telling a lie, and it's not going to, because what happens is we do shows, right? We let them tell us who we are. The shows fail, and then they blame us for the shows failing. So I'm like, if the show's going to fail, then blame me because I made the call. But I don't let you make the call anymore, because the reality of it is that this picture right here is how my family looks. And it's not my fault. So if colonization shows up and I have a cousin that's dark skinned with blue eyes, guess what? I didn't do that. But this is the reality of who we are. So if I'm gonna tell my story, then you gotta let me tell this story, because I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it if it's at the cost of me swallowing, it's just, especially us, like Tiffany Haddish is one of my best friends, and she told me, look, if you don't tell them, they're not gonna suggest it. If you don't say, hey, we don't do that. We don't talk like that. We don't say that. That's not what we do. They're not gonna say it. So you have to. And if it costs you the gig, you don't want to be there anyway because they're about to make you a clown. And so for me, that's the safe space that I've been creating, is that comedy affords me a privilege that a lot of people don't have, because I get to say on stage, of the stages of comedy, things that need to be said that can't be said in another way. But I'm developing a show. I'm developing I'm in the middle of making a movie. I'm in the middle of developing an animated series. I'm doing my TV show and my special. Every single one of those things that I'm doing have to reflect our spectrum. Because if not, then I'll tell my partners I'm good. Because I'm not gonna. I don't want to deal with the aftermath of that later. I just don't. It's not worth it for me.
And that's part of, in essence, a maturity of, knowing what you want, knowing who you are, knowing what you will take and what you will not take. But there are many people young in the game who are like, okay, let me just work, let me just get in, and I'll take what it, that mentality. And I, hope at some level we can, switch that mentality and be like, no, like, know who you are, know what your worth is. But, there's still that fear of, not getting funding, not getting on TV, not being seen, not getting the work. So that is also part of the reality of, the fear that people have in this industry. But kudos.
That's real. That's real, and that's fair, and that's part of growing up, and part of being in the world, part of being in the industry is mastering diplomacy. There's so much as you're coming up, you're listening, and you should be listening. You should be listening to your elders. You should be listening to people who've been there longer. You should be sort of figuring, like mapping out what it is and what you want. And that's absolutely right and perfect. And the only way you know what's not right for you is to do it and realize that it's not right for you. That's, we have to fail forward. Now, somewhere, for different, it happens at different times for different people, but somewhere in I was an early bloomer. My give a damn kind of broke at around 35. Like, I really stopped giving a shit. Pardon me, I don't know, we sound blue. So, just using my voice a little bit more and pushing the envelope a little bit more. And, and the longer that you're in there, and then who you can talk to and how you can talk to that person, and figuring out where you can sort of land and where your voice will be better heard. And then your voice kind of gets louder and louder, and then your demands get clearer, and what you want to do, what is important to you, starts to crystallize. And hopefully by then you can make that move. But what Ada was talking about in terms of failing, and I don't think anybody understands more than these people here that I'm looking at, these beautiful people, is if you fail, then suddenly you're failing your entire culture. You're failing your entire country, your entire being. All of Afro-Latinidad is resting on your success. And that's a lot. And it's also absurd.
It's daunting. Is similar, I guess, as they say, the black tax. Like, you got to bring everybody with you, and have the responsibility on your shoulders, and that is unfair to people. So I just want to go to Rick, and then Yaya, and then Selena and Sarah. Like, what are some of the things that you are implementing to, like, be part of the solution, or on your sets or projects that you are doing?
I think for me, I haven't produced yet. I haven't thought about directing, but I have picked up the pen and started, should I say, just getting on final draft and starting to create an idea that's in my head. And God willing, like, that'll come to fruition. But I think on a very simple level, it's just affirming people that I see. Like, if I'm at an audition room, or if I see another actor that I haven't met before, but he's doing his thing. And it's just a really simple, like, yo, man, congrats. I see you doing your thing. Much love. And that's it, you know, but that's organic and real. And I'm telling them, yo, you're dope, you know, and I think that kind of like, because I'm all about like, if this whole idea of like, you know, a Latin explosion, or us like really finding our footing and really getting a, you know, having a place at the table and telling our stories in such a way that people are entertained and we're finally finding our success, then I think it starts with an organic place of like, yo, you're dope. We all respect each other. We love the work that we're doing, and we're celebrating each other for the small victories and the big ones. Because if we celebrate the small ones, then that big moment when one of us hits it big, we could be there celebrating together, and you know, and it feels good and it's organic and that's real, you know. And I can only say that because I see the Black community does it all the time. You know, they celebrate each other for the small things, and then when one hits it big, then they're celebrating together, and then they pick each other up, you know. And I just think like it's not really that, you know, it shouldn't be any different. You know, love looks the same. You know, love should look the same if you're taking care of your family or you're taking care of your friends, you know. And I just think like for me, that's like the first thing I can do that easy. You know, I don't need money to just show love, you know.
Because,
and so,
you know, there's the world of abundance. We were taught to fight for the crumbs, but everybody can eat. You know, everybody can have a story. Everybody can be successful.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to judge actors for doing jobs that I feel like is giving them a career, is giving them, you know, opportunity, you know, because I wouldn't want them to judge me for that. I'm not the person that created the project, you know. Now, if I'm the content creator creating, you know, something that's very stereotypical, then now you can hold my feet to the fire. But I truly feel like to hold actors, you know, accountable for the jobs that they're booking, you know, when we don't appreciate the kind of roles that they're getting is not fair at all. Because I think we're misdirecting the issue to, you know, they're finding the success. So we celebrate that success, and then we get together and put our heads together and say, how do we, you know, push forward and find parts that are going to be more meaningful. You know, but I think, you know, it's unfair for the way we treat each other. And I think that needs to change first. And so for me, it's like showing love, you know, also like mentoring people that, you know, are coming up and have ideas. And, you know, I offer my advice, or I offer whatever, you know, my services, and say, hey, I'm in, you know, if you have a project that I like, I'm in, you know. So for me, that's the easiest way that I could, you know, kind of create like change.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. You're on mute.
Sorry. I love what you said, Rick, about at the very end, you know, giving people a shot and seeing if there's a project that I like, I'm in. Because I think there's such a hierarchy, and it's a ladder, right? We climb the ladder. Okay, now I'm in this category of people in the casting directors list, or now my tape gets sent direct, or now I get a meeting, or now I don't even audition, I get offers. And as people's heads start to swell, their like openness to like the up and comers, it's harder to say yes to projects that may not generate as much money, but these like unknown artists and writers are oftentimes telling the stories that we need to be told. So it's just, you know, staying open and clear-sighted. As someone who's starting to write, on the other side of it, I'm having to really check myself and the tendencies to fall into the traps that I've been taught. There's this healer on Instagram called The Hood Healer, who talks about the white man in our heads. And we're so used to needing, like, even if it's a Black movie or even if it's an Afro-Latinx movie, we feel the need to have a white point of entry. We feel the need to not piss them off too much, or not make the white villain too bad, you know, like give him the edge that because if they don't like it, like, then my movie's not gonna be successful, like, or if they feel alienated by it, it's gonna harm me. And so just like not being scared to tell the truth, and not feeling like I have to please the audience that it's not really for anyway. So that's something that I've been thinking about as I'm starting to create content.
Awesome. Salinas?
Well, I definitely for a long time thought that I mean, you give me a script, I'll act, like that's my job. I'm just an actor. And now I'm realizing that no, I am an author. I have my book, and writing that book made me feel like, you know what? Oh, you could write, you could do this, you could create. And so now it's, I have some shows currently, right there. So producing, directing is definitely in the horizon, and I'm excited about that because then you have control. You have control who's in the writer's room. You have control over who you cast, and that's important. I feel like that's really where the power lies. So I'm excited about that. And going back to what Rick said originally, it's just kindness. Kindness goes a long way. I remember the years of me being a guest on someone else's show, coming on to do a day player and being treated like crap, or not being looked at, not being welcomed. And I always thought that was so strange. It's like, this is your house. You know what I mean? This is your show. Don't you want me to give the best in your house? So I'm always very conscious of when I have people coming on to, if it's a show that I'm established on, to be like, hey, how you doing? Even background actors, coming out and being like, everybody's good, giving them the pep talk, thanking them. Because we seem to forget, it's like so easy to, like, once you're like a guest star, a series regular, people forget that you were one time, if you were coming up like all of us, you were sitting there, feeling awkward, being ignored. So for me, that's been a big part of, as I move along in my career, is making sure that the people that I am on set with, I encourage. I'm not stepping on director's tail, but I'm gonna be like, listen, a little, a little sneak, love, or a little sneak, like, that was good, or because I think that it meant so much when people did it for me. You know what I mean? So I want to give back. I've been helped along the way on a set and off a set. Gina Torres let me stay in her house before I was, on any hit show. I was like, girl, pilot season is here and I don't got any money.
I got a room.
And she got a room. And it was, that to me meant the world. You know what I mean? And so it's like sending the elevator back down, like Tiffany Haddish did for my girl, Ida. So we need to remember that. It's just humanity. We're lacking a lot of that these days. And if we just hone into that, we can make a difference to the next, Oscar-winning director, Oscar-winning, whatever it is. I think that kindness goes a long, long way, and people will remember that. People will remember that. I will never forget Essa Patha on Law and Order and how she embraced me, and how she told me, girl, remember A, B, and C. I'll never forget that, because then that was a lesson, and I hope to continue to do that along the way. I hope we all, and I have a feeling everyone on this panel is doing it already, but I encourage everyone to do the same.
Last but not least is Sarah.
I feel it's important to just stay true to who you are. I was blessed enough to have loving parents that are 100% full Mexican, but they never try to take my Blackness away. They taught me their culture. Spanish was my first language. I didn't learn English until I started school, but even though they, are full Mexican, they never push that on me, like, okay, well, you're Mexican and you're not Black, So I did get reached out to by a label years ago that wanted to sign me, but all they saw in me was oh, she could make us money because look, she's Black and she's speaking Spanish. So I could have signed with them, but their terms were, well, you can't go perform with your afro. Like, you need to change your dressing. You need to look the part. You want to sing regional Mexican, then you need to look it, you know? And so for me, it was just like, no, you know? And look at me now, you know, my label saw something in me. They never tried to change me. They never tried to take away from like who I am and who I feel I am. And I just feel like staying true to yourself, even if you have to be patient and wait for as long as that takes, I feel like that's just so important, because I could have signed with this label years ago, but I would have been so unhappy and I wouldn't have been myself. And now I feel like my story like is just getting out there, and I feel like people are truly seeing me for who I am, and I don't have to change myself. I don't have to act different, dress different, be different on myself. And when you're yourself and you're confident in yourself, like that's when change can happen and people take you seriously. And yeah, I mean, just echoing off of everybody else, like it's just about being kind. Like I have been through so much and, you know, made fun of and just all these things. And I look at myself and I really didn't think that I would ever be here, and just thinking how I grew up and how I felt so different and how I felt like I wasn't enough, and seeing myself now, I feel like kindness is the way to go, and just giving people chances, because you never know what people are battling silently. Like you never know. And yeah, just a smile, just a word of encouragement can make such a difference in someone's life.
I agree. Kindness. So we're going to start wrapping up a little bit, and there are some questions from our audience that we need to tackle. So one or two of you can answer. But one is, have you had experience working in Latin America? And if so, can you share those experiences?
Well, for me, early on in my career in New York, I was dealing with just the Spanish theater. So I was dealing with a lot of, you know, Latin American people and Caribbean people. And that's where I realized, like, oh, wow, my Latin America, they don't see me at all as anything other than the criadas, you know, the maids. That was my experience early on in the theater in New York City. Every Lorca production, I was la criada. You know, at 20 years old, I was playing the 60-year-old criada, you know, because they could not even fathom that I could even be considered for a lead. And that was my experience, maybe not necessarily in Latin America, but with amongst the community. So that was really, that was like an early lesson also of like how people saw me versus how I felt, because I was like, I could be that, you know, and they were like, no, you can't, because you don't look it. But so that was my experience with that, which was a little bit daunting, I think.
I would always get asked to be on those cheesy reality shows like The Cheaters, Doce Corazones. Like, I don't know what they always. I was the Rosie Perez, so they would always, you know, they perpetuate that. Like, I don't know if you've experienced this, Selenas, but I'll have a white friend or a friend that'll say, "Oh, don't mess with Ida. She'll pull out her knife."
Yeah.
Like, no, Ida won't, because Ida's not going to jail for because your feelings are hurt. Like, what gave you the impression that that's who I am? But that's how so when they would call me for those shows, they would be like, we want you to be the spicy Puerto Rican that beats up her boyfriend because he cheated on her. And I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't, I'll just go work at Ralph's. But no.
Yeah, the limited stereotypes that we have to combat and, you know, make, you know, bust the doors down is many, but I think we can do it. The next,
I worked a little bit. I did my junior year of college in Brazil, and I worked a little bit when I was there. And I was actually, what was highlighted for me was the self-hate, because I worked a lot, and I had friends that didn't. And I just did mostly commercials and stuff, but they would always be like, oh, well, she's Brazilian, but she's American, so she's like Beyonce, so she's prettier than, you know, it was just, than like a pure Brazilian. It was very strange. They have like, it's beyond, there's colorism and then there's like regionalism. I don't know, but yeah, it was actually seen as this like hot commodity to be like of both places.
Yeah, I think also like in Latin America, like the duality of being American is also a thing, you know. Having that privilege, having that mindset also can either, you know, help us or hinder us depending on who we're speaking to. And one of my things is colonialism. Whoever invented it did an amazing job because it's affected everybody in the world, you know, not just, you know, on this hemisphere, but, you know, on the other. So our next question is, do you feel pressured now to downplay your Afro-Latino heritage to work? I mean, because of the panel, I was like, I don't think anybody does, but
no, you know, that I think that sort of goes with what I was saying earlier. You know, I've been doing this over 30 years now, and you know, right around I mean, at one point you're just like, and not that I never downplayed it. Let me just make this super clear. I never downplayed it because no one was looking at me like I was Latina anyway. So I was always fully myself. I was always playing who I am. It was everybody else that couldn't see it. And so that's their problem. But now being in the position where I can say, you know what? This character is Afro-Latina. I'm going to start a new job in the next few weeks, and I'm joining the cast of 911 Lone Star. And I was talking to the writers, and great script, great character. And I said, there's just this one thing. And she has a family. She has a husband. And I said, they need to be Afro-Latino. They're like, what does that mean? Okay, what does that look like? What does that mean? I said, this is what it looks like. This is what it means. And that's any chance that I get. It's just like, let's write it down. Let's like eliminate the guesswork.
Yeah.
That's what this is. This is what we look like. And there's a double-edged sword there, because as an actor, you don't want to be pegged and pigeonholed and put in a box. You want to be able to play, you want the character to lead. You don't want your ethnicity to lead, because being an actor is all about, you know, being a reflection of humanity. So ultimately, what does it matter? But from being in a box that's been ignored for so long, we're at the point where it does matter. It's absolutely integral to who we are, to our survival, that we, you know, say who we are and embrace it.
And there's definitely a need. I mean, even like as us growing up, like me and my sister and my brother, like, hey, if there was any Latino or Latino sounding name on TV, we would try to find who they are, what's happening, who they are, like where they're from, you know, because they represented us. There was like a glimpse, oh, they look like us, or at least they speak Spanish.
Yeah. And they belong to me.
One of the people that I definitely want to honor is Romeo Santana, who was on the Steve Harvey show, and he played a Dominican, and he spoke Spanish on the show, and he was definitely somebody that, you know, was up and coming and until his untimely death. But it's important, like, you know, when you notice, like, oh my God, he's speaking Spanish, you know, he's just not the cute black guy that's in the high school. You know, there's more to it than that. We're gonna start wrapping up soon. So we're just gonna, if there are any other thoughts that you wanted to interject or say that you didn't have a chance to say, please feel free.
I do want to say this, and I feel the responsibility to say this because I've been on a couple of panels and some of them have gone awry. There's been a lot of you know, talk about this on social media. And I think it's very important for us to hold each other accountable and to be honest about our reality, and at the same time hold the industry accountable for their misuse of power when it comes to our community. And let's not get distracted in tearing each other down and not hold the real problem, hold the light on the real problem. I'm a light-skinned Latina, and the reality is that it's different for me. I have a privilege that my darker brothers and sisters don't have, and that is the truth. And still, at the end of the day, I try not to invalidate other people's struggles because they don't look like mine. Because if I get raped and a white woman gets raped, I can't tell that white woman that her rape is not valid. But I still want to make sure that we are honest and we really hold this industry accountable, because the reason why we have these issues is because of what you said: colonialism, colonization. It is when we start blaming each other and engaging in respectability politics and holding ourselves and each other responsible for our own oppression, we're doing white supremacy's work. So I just want to make sure that, I say that I'm going to always do my part to be, a voice and lead the charge and use my privilege and my power to create opportunities for us, because I feel it is my responsibility to do that. But I want to make sure that we hold the industry accountable, because when we don't do that and we start fighting with each other, nothing gets accomplished.
Totally agree.
You know what? I thank you. This is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Magdalena, Rick, Gina, Salinas, Yaya, Ida, and Sarah, you guys have given us life tonight. It has been so much of a constructive conversation, and I am so looking forward to continuing this dialogue. As AAFCA and NALIP continues to celebrate Latino Heritage Month, we will have a part 2 of this conversation on Wednesday, September 30th, where we will be talking to a group of Afro-Latinx directors. So we invite you to join in on that. We also invite the audience, for those of you who missed our amazing conversation tonight. This will live on the AAFCA channel on YouTube. So definitely you can go there and find it. And I mean, all of you, our community needs so much healing. And I think the dialogue that you guys have given us is a very, very, very good first start. I'm so glad each of you said yes. And we definitely look forward to talking more about the solutions. We're going to do this talk again next year, and we're going to have some content creators and some agents and some producers, and really get to the bottom of it. So on behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, thank you. Enjoy your evening. Stay safe.
Wait, I just wanted to say,
keep your hands clean and wear your mask, right?
I just wanted to dar las gracias to all of you for participating, for allowing me to be the moderator. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for, especially in this crazy COVID time, to be on Zoom. Hopefully one day we can all meet in person, but thank you for a wonderful conversation and information and just being honest and open and your kindness.
Absolutely. And please follow AAFCA and NALIP on our social. Would you guys like to share your social handles as well?
Selena Slava official.
I am Gina Torres.
At Rick Gonzalez.
Rick Gonzalez.
Yep. At Rick Gonzalez on Instagram.
Ida?
Costa on Instagram.
At Funny Ida, AIDA.
Sarah? Sarah?
She's muted.
Oh, okay.
Unmute Sarah.
Unmute Sarah. Okay, remember Sarah's name.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. What's your social?
Oh, Carne asada.
Your social is Carnessa?
Carne asada.
No, I think it's.
Okay.
I think it's Sara La Morena.
Okay, Sarah La Romina.
And mine is Nubian Latina Prods, or #1 Nubian Latina.
And Ms. Torres?
I am Gina Torres on Instagram.
Yes, you are.
Fantastic. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having me.